thought I read it, but I don't think it's how. Video's recording whenever you're ready.
You just had to break it, didn't you? Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order, the Bath Township Board of Trustees. To order at 6 o'clock p.m. Welcome, everyone. We'll start with a roll call to see who's here.
Mr. Funes Bliss?
I'm here.
Ms. Butler Challenger here. Ms. Wilson?
Here.
Ms. Hagerman?
Here.
Ms. Kellerman?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Here.
Thank you.
Oh, you jumped all around on that one. Now's the time when we do a civic reflection. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A moment of silence, please. Thank you. Welcome back to my colleagues and our staff and our folks participating in the audience and folks watching at home. This could be our last meeting of the year, so happy to spend some time with you tonight. Let's start out with an approval of the agenda. I think I heard that we may want to move something around here.
Yes, items for action, the fire department replacement of engines. I don't want to make an action item. I would like it for items for introduction and discussion first.
So that would be,
Removing A and making it 14, new business, AD.
D, got it. Any objection to that?
Is there a time constraint on that?
Are you ready to spend 2 point,
Well, no, I just wanted to
for
bring it
the
up
2
as
weeks'
all.
notice? No,
Okay,
I want discussion.
okay,
I think we can ask that question when we get there too.
okay. Oh, right.
Any other changes or alterations? All right. Someone want to put that in a motion form?
I'll move the approval of the agenda with the changes moving from an action item into discussion item for the fire department.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any other discussion about the agenda tonight? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have ourselves an agenda. Are there any disclosures of conflict of interest on any of the topics from our board members tonight? All right. We'll move right into item number 5, which is public statements. This is a chance for folks in the public to speak to the board about items that are currently on the agenda for up to 3 minutes. If you have any other topic you'd like to talk to us about, there's another time at the end of the agenda where you can say whatever you'd like under the sun to us for 3 minutes. But this first one is for items on the agenda. Are there any public?
George Baker, State Road, East Lansing. I just like for the board to consider reappointing me for the road committee. If there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Other public comments tonight? All right, we'll move to items from county, state, federal, or other agencies. I see Commissioner Washington in the back. Welcome.
Thank you, Dwight Washington, 15566 Park Lake. And good evening, Board of Trustees. There's a number of things I'd like to address the board with tonight. As it's coming to the end of the year and things are culminating, and it's an opportunity to look back, see what we've done, which is a lot, and to look forward to see what's what's in front of us. The first thing I want to say is that the movement on norm fasteners has really brought a lot of attention to Bath, and a lot of good things are being said about that. And it's also bringing a new look to Bath leadership, and it appears to be a very good start. So I want to compliment you and encourage you to continue to doing what you're doing. And it's been great to see Miles out in the community at some of the Tri-County Regional Plan meetings, and I think that also shows how Bath is connected to the area. Secondly, I wanted to say that a lot of the time and attention lately has been talking about septic, solar, and wind, and I'm not sure, but there's a variety level of understandings about what's taking place in the county, but also how do people decide what their policy to be for these alternative energies. And that's really important because on the 14th of January, excuse me, my date is wrong, at 12/14. My notes are wrong, sorry. But there's a public hearing coming up that they're asking for comment on this new solar ordinance, and I can get that back to you or answer any questions later if anybody's wondering. But that will be the opportunity for the community to voice in on how do they want the land policy be for solar power. The third thing I wanted to address real quickly is to bring to your awareness that the opioid settlements are starting to be discussed and talked about, and that while those monies are available to the community, there's discussion about how those funds should be being spent. So I don't know if the community or Bath has an interest in that, but this is an opportunity for people to weigh in on where they want those settlement dollars to go. Fourth, this is a change of note because as I've realized, like, what do I do? I kind of shared with you some of the things that are taking place on the county level, but as a county commissioner, then that also puts me into different communities and different organizations. And one of them is the Department of Health and Human Services. And the Department of Health and Human Services today really kind of brought to a significant transition of where we are post-pandemic. And there's been a lot of concern and challenges with the redistribution of monies for Medicaid, food stamps, and other services that are provided to our community from the government. And so they went through this big redistribution process where they're trying to figure out who was eligible and who wasn't and for how much money. And that really created a ripple in the system. But Clinton County has been a leader for the state, and they've reported above 90% targeting and reaching of those communities. So it was really a moment of congratulations and recognition for a job well done by our Department of Health and Human Services, as they've been a leader in the state. And so I want to point out to them. 5, which is of interest to a lot of people, I want to return to the Robin Grant. And the Robin Grant is actually, the 21st is when we're waiting for further decision on how those monies are going to be spent and what they will, and how much they will be. 6, in this holiday season, time of need for people is high, and we've got, one of the things I really want to bring to people's attention is we do have more and more services that are now targeting the Bath area, where in the past there's been a emphasis on northern parts of the area, and I think now as I'm getting communications from our social services agencies that they are targeting Bath and trying to make their services available, and particularly through Building Stronger Community, the Building Stronger Community Coalition, they are working with schools, they're working with child care organizations to help new parents, become aware of some of the challenges and resources that are available out there. And the last thing, thank you for your patience. I wanted to say that there's an interesting development going on at Mott's Park, and that would be on January 25th. Mott's Park is going to start night hike park walks. And they'll be charging $5 for an individual, $20 for a family, but it appears to be that there's a need and a want for outdoor recreational activity in the evenings, and there are some areas in Clinton County that are trying to facilitate that. And I thank you for your time and cater to any questions you may have.
I just had one, the solar policy, is that at the county level that you were referencing earlier, or state level?
The question is excellent. And it's really, the policy is changing and the policy is new, so there's kind of a lot of like fluctuation between who does have control over this. And Right now, it's 500 megawatts or higher. Lower is within the county's jurisdiction.
Okay.
You mentioned the Robin grant. When you said there was going to be another round of decision-making, is that in December or January?
December.
December, okay, thank you.
This week.
Well, wish you well.
I would, driving up 27, I keep noticing these turnarounds, Michigan turnarounds. How have they affected the accidents that have been up there? Has it helped or has it hindered?
I would say that's another good question. There's been a lot of advocacy by different organizations in opposition to that, and the state has really held their line in saying that it was a good idea, but they do seem to be taking that into consideration for further policy development on those lanes. But as to a study that says how long it's, or how effective it is, I can look into that with, and see if, who's collecting that data, I guess.
Being an old farm boy, I know how fast equipment moves down a road, and when you run them down 27 to make your turn to go back across, I do realize that there's, you know, as the cars are coming, to go straight across is a hindrance too. But it seemed like it would take them tractors quite a while to get their equipment turned and get it over to the far side and then make their turn and come back.
It's a decision that's being dictated by the state, and there is advocacy and there is concern with the Tri-County Regional Plan. I think would have that information. I can look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, and I wish you all happy holidays.
Thank you, you too. That brings us to number 7 on the agenda, the consent agenda. We've got some minutes to receive and file.
I move we accept the consent agenda as printed.
Second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. There's no discussion on a consent agenda, so we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda stands. That brings us to the approval of minutes. We have the minutes of the Board of Trustees regular meeting December 4th. Is there comments or action folks would like to do on this?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the Board of Trustees regular meeting on December 4th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. That brings us to the approval of the vouchers. Is there discussion or movement on the vouchers tonight?
I'll make a motion to accept the vouchers for the Board of Trustees regular meeting. What is today, December 18th, 2023?
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion, a second. Any other discussion about the vouchers tonight? All right, we'll do a roll call vote on this one.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes?
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes,
Thank you.
the vouchers are approved. No treasurer's report tonight. We do have some committee appointments for ease of your eyes and ease of our movement tonight. They are all in a single memo. Thanks to the deputy superintendent for helping me to put that together. We can take them individually. We can do them all at once. You can ask questions about them. These are all reappointments. None of these folks are new to their current appointments.
Is it okay if we just take one vote for all of them since they're reappointments?
I got a question before we go into that. We should take these so that everybody isn't ending up at the same date, so that you have to put on 4 new police and fire board members. I'm not sure how George and Carl rank up with our not all stopping at one time.
Oh, because they all end in 27?
They all end in 27 or 26.
And they're, There's 7 on that board, right? The police and fire board? So
Yes,
3 of
but the
them-
other 3 also are termed out.
Oh,
Is that
So
true in
they-
each one, each committee?
No,
Just-
I think
just
this might be the only committee, and when I asked the deputy superintendent that, she said, some of the effect of that's how it's been done, or that's where we're at now. But I don't disagree with Al.
so should we change like just 2 of them to end in 26 and then 2 of them that end in 27? So they're staggered a little?
That seems reasonable.
Yeah, and then with the final 3, we could stagger.
Do you have a consideration with which 2 should be in 26 and which 2 should be in 27?
I don't, do you, Al?
No. Mick, you get the first 2, we leave them at 27
And Todd and Lee put at 26?
and put them at 26.
Is there any opposition to that?
Sounds good to me.
Are folks okay moving this all at once, or do you want to do it individually?
Let's do it all at once.
Kate, you got a question? She had a look at her
She
face.
I
did,
was
yes.
You said that that was the end of their term forever?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay. We would just reappoint them?
Yes.
3 years.
If
Yeah,
they
I
wanted
should
to.
say the end of their appointment. You're
Okay.
right. All right, does someone want to put that in motion form?
I'll make the motion to accept all the recommendations for the reappointments to the committees, commissions, or boards that are in the board packet, except for the 2 terms for the police and fire board for Todd Jensen and Lee McAllister. They will end in 2026 instead of 2027.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll take a voice vote here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, welcome back to your committees, friends. There are still some folks that are ending their appointment December 31st of this year that have not gotten back to me or staff about either re-upping or moving off. So we'll be sort of poking those folks to see what they want to do. Most of them will expire on the 31st, and unlike the Planning Commission where they can continue to serve, these folks actually do stop serving on the 31st. So we'll want to make sure our committees are up to speed and up to staff if we need more folks. I'll keep you updated on that. All right, that brings us to item 12, Township Committee Reports. You should have in your packet a memo from myself and Miles, our planner. We had a discussion at the Planning Commission this past week about moving forward priorities. Each year, the Planning Commission puts together a work plan for the entire year. It's really helpful to have the priorities figured out, what we need to do now, what we need to do later, and what we need to maybe not do at all because the board's not interested. So what you see in here are, I believe, 4 topics that the Planning Commission has asked us to think about. I wanted to give you some time to think about that, so I'm not expecting any response from anybody tonight, but I wanted to get this in our packet so you and others can start thinking. The core of this really comes down to, it's not a good use of time for the Planning Commission to work for months and months and months like they often do on ordinances and other pieces of planning, material for us, and then send it up to us and us say, actually, we're not interested in that at all. Why were you spending time on that? It's sort of a morale killer for the Planning Commission and not a great use of their time. So these questions are really, ultimately, should we spend our time on this? Is there an appetite at the board level to talk about this? That doesn't mean that we would vote yes on whatever they send us, but that means we're interested in them doing research and bringing in expertise and drafting policy that we would then be asked to consider. But if some of these items are like, we're not interested in going down there, we don't want to touch these items, they're not priorities for us, I think the Planning Commission would appreciate that now, so they spend no time on it and can hyper-focus on the things that we do care about. So I'm happy to take questions on that. Our planner is here, our Planning Commission chair is here. They're happy to take questions on that. Otherwise, this will come back in your packet, our first meeting in January, for us to have a more robust conversation to give some direction to the Planning Commission.
And I'm not sure if it'll go to which member of the commission or the chairperson here, but on number 3, the ordinance for wind, solar, and battery and renewable energy, I wish our esteemed colleague from the county was still here, but he's not. It's been my understanding, and I think, John, maybe you and I have had some discussion on this, that most of those decisions have been moved to the Public Service Commission from the state side of things. Is that correct?
That's correct. The legislators in their infinite wisdom decided that local control over alternative energy or green energy, whatever you want to call it, was too big an issue for the local people to deal with. So they kicked it to the Michigan Public Service Commission. They've given us a 3-month window of time to review any applications for wind, solar, or battery storage in Michigan that is 50 megahertz gigs or higher of energy. Not gigs, I'm sorry, megawatts of energy in the state. If you don't take action in that 30-day or 60-day, or 90-day window, it automatically goes to the Michigan Public Service Commission, which has 3 members, and they'll rule on the scope of the project, where it'll be, any setbacks, any restrictions, et cetera, et cetera. So the planning commission felt that if there was any interest on the board in regulating alternative energy at all, we would have to have some boilerplate language in place, because 90 days doesn't give us much time to create a ordinance, do research, and get it to the board and get it passed. So it would end up automatically going to the MPSCs. And if you followed the last few decisions by the MPSC board, it's pretty much driven by the lobbyists. So that's why we're asking if you have any interest in this.
Is this the same reason why the county is doing that right now too?
The county has drafted their own ordinance, which is highly restrictive, so I don't know how that's gonna work out. I can't really answer that question. We did review their ordinance. I think it's gonna end up going to the MPSC, anything from the county. But there are 2 charter townships in Clinton County, which can make their own rules.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
So out of these, is that the ordinance that you guys want to work on? I mean, is that like your main priority? Is that why?
I don't know that it's a main priority, Jennifer, but
Okay.
I think we've only identified 2, maybe 3 parcels in Bath that would be large enough
Okay.
to support a solar array. The rumor I get from some of the people that work for MPSC as advisors, they would like to lower the bar now that we've got a bar in place. They'd like to make it lower. I don't know what that lower number is, but they'd like more control at the state level over it. Any other questions? Yes, Jack.
Do you or Miles have any, so this 50 gigahertz thing, I mean, I don't know if that's like by car radio, or do you have some idea what 50 gigahertz in terms of a development would be, or?
About 200 acres of actual solar panels.
Okay,
So you'd have to have a site that's probably
200
double
acres.
that.
okay, that's what I wanted
So
to.
lots of car radios.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
That's the present technology. Now, as panels improve, of course, that number could go down.
Jennifer, I think the first 3 are very specific to items that have been either circulating in the state, circulating in the community, circulating in the planning commission. The fourth is sort of a catch-all. Do we have, grand ideas about what type of development we want in what areas? But the 3 before are pretty tangible.
You've had those 3 come up. Okay.
Yes, either
I
from
mean, I
the
know
planning
about the wind
commission or
or
from
solar battery
residents.
one, yes.
Yeah.
The other 2 I have not heard about, so,
Any other questions?
okay.
Does the 4th item, developments, does that outlined currently in the comprehensive plan?
Yes, and it's got a lot of loopholes in it.
Okay,
Lot of leeway.
so there's other factors we need to work out,
Yeah, well,
in addition to what's in the comp
and I
plan.
understand that we're gonna buy more RUs for the sewer system, so that could affect where you can put development and how much.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, as of the 1st, this will fall to you.
Mr. Supervisor, did you indicate you wanted this to come back at the first January meeting for additional discussion?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I don't know that we need to take any specific action. We could if the board wanted to, but I think the planning commission is looking for some direction. I think if we were maybe split, then we would want to put something to a vote. But otherwise, I think they're just looking for some good-hearted guidance. All right, any other questions or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I got one.
Go ahead.
John, the grading and the runoff proposal, I thought we had one pretty well set.
Not that we're aware of.
There is a couple lines of text that address it, and there is an agency at the county, the soil erosion agency.
Yeah.
That will deal with some of that, but this is one of those areas where depending on the development, we have ran into this a couple of times this year, where the drain commission's authority stops, where the soil erosion, department's authority stops, and where like Eagle's authority stops, and where our authority stops, all leads to a gray area, where like really no one has oversight. Either the site's too big, or it's too small, or it's too far from a county drain. There can be a lot of factors. So there has been a couple of developments, motion on the residential side, where we haven't had kind of the tools in our toolbox to regulate what they're doing grading wise.
Okay.
So that was kind of this.
I was looking more at commercial and,
Now, when it comes to commercial, we're usually good to go.
Yeah.
Usually it's the residential side of things where we kind of get in a bind and we have the, again, the ability to regulate in a meaningful way.
okay.
Thanks, Miles. I think this is a nice precedent to set for other committees as well. Since most of our other committees are advisory in nature, I think it would be helpful for us to give the committees some idea of what we're looking for advice on. I often hear from committee members, what are we supposed to be spending our time on? And, I've heard from committee members, we send stuff to the board and you don't do the things we want you to do. So this could be a good test case to see if this is a good format for us to give some guidance to committees so that they can use their time in the best way possible. All right, let's keep moving here. That brings us up to B, items for action, the fourth quarter budget amendments from the superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The first paragraph in my memo was a point of education for all of you. It's a paragraph of text that's adopted when we adopt the General Appropriations Act along with our budget. But it usually says township officials. We had a meeting recently with our accountants, and it was pointed out that really because I create, monitor, and manage the budget, that, and we adopt the budget at a department level, that really we need to be making our amendments at a department level as well. Where I don't have the authority to do that is anything to do with personnel. So I can't arbitrarily take money out of salaries and put it in, let's just say if the telephone line was over in a department, I don't have the authority to take or put money into salaries or benefits. And so a lot of the amendments that you see here tonight are asking you to make specific amendments to either salaries or benefits. And then there are additional items that need to be adjusted as well. So I'm just trying to keep you apprised of where money may move to in a department where there's money still available. So I can go over these if you'd like me to, or answer any questions.
So did you take off anything that wasn't salary related?
So you'll see in the first one under Township Board, there's actually a general fund balance amount needed. So under additional funds, the third bullet point down, I did let you know that contractual and professional services, insurance and bonds, and dues and memberships would need additional monies from the general fund balance.
But in the future, you could make that move because it's not salaries?
If there was additional money left in the
In the same
department.
department, okay, thank you.
That's just not the case with the township board, or my department as the superintendent. If you move to the second page under the assessor, excuse me, you'll see, the 2023 amended budget, and then you'll see right under that, a year-to-date available balance of over $100,000. If there were any line items other than salary and benefits that were over in that, I could move that money around to balance those line items.
Great, that gives you a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, it was a great recommendation by our accounting firm to help us make this process a little easier, especially at year end.
Will you be providing us, when you move money within a department, you won't actually change the budget though, right?
So you will see budget amendments, you'll see more, let's just say a telephone line if it's running over. You will see more money added to the amended budget versus the original budget, and that would show up to you under a revenue and expenditure report.
So you will actually be amending the budget?
Correct.
Got it, okay. Yeah, I think it is helpful when you point out that that has happened for some added transparency, but I do think it's helpful, every time you have to buy more pencils, you don't have to come to the board to say,
Correct,
"You
and
need
that's what
money
the
for that."
accountant said, is that it lends itself to a micromanagement at a level that's not healthy. You all should be interested in what should be transparent is what's occurring in the department, but not managing the number of pencils or paper clips being used by that department.
And then typically, this is the meeting where we would do this for the rest of the year, but I know later on the agenda is a talk about a special
Correct.
meeting. I know we'll get there, but can you talk about how those things are connected?
So usually, we use this last meeting in December as our final take on whatever needs to be amended. Our accounting firm recommended that we have always kind of hold a date the last week of December to make any necessary changes in the line items that we may discover after we do some year-end financial work. So that was a recommendation by the accountants as well, just to keep us in a good place, so that nothing comes in over, or mainly over. So just holding that date, and then if you don't need it, you can cancel it.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for the superintendent? Are we ready to move this to action then?
I make a motion to accept the fourth quarter 2023 budget amendments for December 18th, 2023.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All right, we'll go back to a roll call vote for this one.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That motion carries. That brings us to new business, items for introduction, discussion. The first is a resolution, the adoption of the 2024 to 2028 5-year Parks and Rec Plan. Our deputy superintendent couldn't be here today. Superintendent, do you have anything to say, or should we turn it over to the committee chair?
I would be comfortable turning it over to the committee chair. I think the deputy superintendent included this resolution, so you would see what you'd be adopting at the next meeting potentially, along with the public notice that there will be a public hearing at the next meeting. And then, of course, Mr. Montry can go over the plan, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to assist him.
All right, thank you. We'll
Thank
turn it
you.
over to Chair Montry, who's coming off from a great victory on the soccer team last night.
Got the 6th and 7th graders back together for indoor, having fun, so. Well, thank you everyone for having me here tonight. So we'll start with some thank yous. So thank you to all of you. Also, I think it's important to say thank you to former trustee Benzie. He was our board representative until recently, and did a lot of great work in kind of pulling together the Farmers Market Board and the Parks and Recreation Board when we joined, so, thank him for his guidance from the committee. So also I'd like to thank the committee. Dwight is on that committee, he was here earlier. It's a great committee, we work really well together. They're pretty efficient meetings, they go fast. So it's always good. Also thank you to Becky and Ben for all of their input to this, as well as their work in the township. And then the Williams & Works was our consulting firm who guided this, gathered the community input, both online surveys and the 2 pop-up events where they did those in public, and then the synthesis and preparation of the actual 5-year plan. So my guess is that you were happy to not have to do that this time around on your own. So the intent here is not to, read to you from this. It's more to just highlight, each of the chapters so that you know what's in it. You'll have a period, as you stated, to review it, public hearing time, and then to ask any questions before hopefully adopting it. So a little reminder is that the formatting and what's included in this is mostly guided by what the state of Michigan is required. So if you have questions about why things are in there, why there's topographical maps, those types of things, a lot of that are requirements. So chapters 1 and 2 are both basically a broad overview of the township. It talks about the township background, the location, structure of the board, and the committees, and the department, demographics of the township, the topography of the watershed, and some non-motorized trails. I don't think there's anything new or surprising in there for any of you, but those are all things that are required for it. Chapter 3 is an inventory of the township parks and recreation facilities. So part of this is that each park facility needs to be assessed as it is a DNR grading system for accessibility. So the table on page 18, table 4.1, shows what the rubric is for that grading. We scored very well on accessibility. We had one park that scored a 1. That is not, it's a reminder, this isn't a good or a bad. It was Fletcher Robbins scored a 1 because it is a fairly low maintained, semi-trail-like system, and so it scores a 1. That's, again, 1 should be viewed as something bad. And Williams & Work came in and said, we had a long discussion when we were going through these when she presented it, and Dwight especially had a lot of questions of how it was brought up, and she said we scored higher than almost every community that they've worked with. She said 5 is we didn't have any 5s, but we had multiple 4s. 5 is like a not really anything happens type thing, but to have multiple 4s, she came back and said of all the places that they've done, we should be very happy, and again, it's a progression, as we plan more facilities, as we think about that, including accessibility, in those is a goal. So, so that's the table, and then on page 18, and then following that, 19, 20, and 21, and 22 are each of the grading in brief descriptions and some nice pictures and layouts, so, those are in there. And then on page 24 and through 26, those detail township-owned underdeveloped parklands or possible future park facilities. So township may own them, they may be unimproved, there may be nothing there currently, but that's a record of those. It also includes recreation facilities within the township that aren't owned by the township. So those would be things like the school baseball fields or the basketball fields. So again, it's not owned by the township, but it's part of the overall recreation and parks possibilities within the township. So chapter 4 details the online community information gathering process. So there was an online survey completed by 236 residents. That was above what we were expecting and above what Williams & Work said would be a good response rate for our community. So they said if we could get, before we did anything, if we could get up to 200-ish, that they would be very happy with that for our size, and we had over 200, so 236. So they feel like that's a good sampling, especially based on what online survey response rates usually are. Besides that, they did 2 pop-up events. One was on June 21st at the Friends of Park Lake Summer Solstice. Another one was on July 13th at the Farmers Market Anniversary Market. And those were asking similar questions that were on the online survey, but more being able in person to be able to interact and engage with people that maybe wouldn't have otherwise filled that out. They're walking by the booth, you know, they can fill them in, they can maybe ask a little bit more nuanced questions, the people responding to those. So for those were the 3 events that they coordinated, and they're described again in chapter 4. So chapter 5 and 6 are kind of the meat of everything here. So chapter 5 are the goals and objectives. So based on community feedback from those 3, the 2 events in the online survey, we sort of organized everything into 7 goals with objectives under each goal. You know, some of the highlights, again, I'm not going to read all of them to you, but some of the highlights were that we continue to add amenities to the Bath Charter Township Parks facilities based on community input and need, expanding our non-motorized network within the Charter Township, focusing on connecting parks, neighborhoods, and schools, and other local destinations. I think, you know, we're with some miles that we're seeing that, you know, where there's other trails that may be in surrounding townships or cities or municipalities, being able to think about how we link up with those so that we can have non-motorized trails between those, you know, our township here and those as well. We have to thoughtfully consider future land acquisition in the township, and then make sure that we're communicating regularly to the township residents using a variety of media regarding our park and recreation opportunities here. So a lot of people said they love the parks. Some people said, I don't know where any of the parks are. So that's as would be expected, right? We ran the gamut on it. So chapter 6 is the action plan. So each of those 7 goals then, in each of the park facilities, we took and organized them, have projects or actions under each facility, and then prioritizing of those projects. So some of the facilities may only have 1 project, but most of them have at least 4, many of them 5. And so as we start to think about what we do in those areas, being able to say, all right, well, based on township feedback, resident feedback from the surveys and those events, that, you know, this was the #1 priority, so let's look at that first. And then that's cross-referenced with the goals that it relates to. So that's table 7.1 on 45 and 46. And then you can see on the right side, all the goals are listed then, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, that those projects or actions relate back to. So always using the input from the community to determine what we're doing in those parks, and linking those back. The appendix includes all of the raw data from those surveys, so it includes the bar graphs and pie charts from there, but it also includes the boxes where it was write whatever you want in here. Some of it was related to parks, some of it was not related to parks. You're welcome to read those and take them how you would like to take them. But the general summary is on the last page there from all of those as well. That you know, most kind of what occurred over and repeatedly. And so again, those you can read those or you can read the summary. It's all up to you. So future timeline, as we think about it here, you know, this is presented here today. Hopefully in January, you know, you'll have time here in the next 3 to 4 weeks to look over it before the next meeting. Add any amendments, changes, suggestions that you might like to incorporate. Deputy Superintendent will work with you to incorporate those. And then once those are incorporated, we hopefully can have it adopted at the January meeting and then meet our state deadline of February 1. So the intention is to submit it that last week of January, so that if there are any troubles with the uploads or the submissions or that kind of thing, we have a few days to be able to do it. So I think with that, I'd like to say, related to this but not related exactly to the plans, thank you all for the ARPA fund allocation that's going towards the pouring place at Wiswasser Park. That's something we've been talking about for the last year. And we had included that in a Spark grant application that had gone in that was not funded, and then it was approved in the CIP project. But it's nice to see that it can move out of that CIP and those ARPA funds can be used for that. So that should happen. Probably it's a warmer temperature pour type thing. So hopefully by the summer that'll be in place and we'll go from there. So happy to answer any questions, or any clarifications, that you might have.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board? Jack?
Just a comment. You know, I was very impressed with this when I looked through it. I thought, you know, I'll just kind of skim through it, but as I kept reading, I'd get more and more ingrained in what was in there, and it was just really, really well done. I especially like the community engagement report section, because it really lets you know what people are thinking about out there, and that was pretty eye-opening, I guess I'll use, for me. So, thank you for your hard
Yeah.
work.
Thank you, and
The
I
whole
think a lot of
committee.
that goes to Williams and Works as well. It was a
Well, for sure, but
decision.
still, yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice that we could sit up there and have these conversations, and she, you know, would record them and ask for clarification, and then, you know, take those back. So, you know, they did a really great job, and that was nice for us to not have to do that lifting, to be able to kind of dig into the discussion around that, and then her to synthesize it.
Other questions, comments? Well, please share with your committee a huge thank you for us. This is a heavy lift. It's important to the township. You know, we've received a little bit of criticism from the community that we don't have a strategic plan. I think we have other documents that can help us plan, and this is certainly one of them.
Great, thank you all.
Madam Superintendent, this is the first time that we've hired an outside firm to do a 5-year plan, is that true?
No, when I came here in 2012, we were working with Spicer Group, and they did our plan at that time. In 2016 and then in 2020, I undertook the creation of those plans with the Recreation Committee. I think there's a much stronger product that you'll see in front of you when it's done by an outside agency. I think it lends professionalism to it. They work with other communities and they know the questions to ask. So I'm very pleased with this and the level of professionalism and time and effort that our staff and our committees have put into this.
Great, thank you. That's what I was
Yep.
going to ask.
Yes.
How you felt the process went.
Ryan, I just want to mention, I tried for 25 minutes to find this plan and documents on demand, and I could not find it.
We apologize for that. That was done prior to the deputy superintendent. It was part of the packet, and then it didn't get it uploaded separately, so I apologize.
It's in the packet, so I can go back.
It was in the materials that the packet is composed of, but I don't think it made it online, so I'll make sure that it goes back out online for people to be able to view it.
Before you get a lot of hate mail, I want to
Yep.
make sure to mention that.
I appreciate that.
I gave her that same feedback last night.
He was looking
In
for
a
it
very
as well.
kind and respectful way. That brings us now to new business, AB, zoning ordinance 31.85, health and wellness centers by our planner, followed by zoning ordinance 31.86, private drives and roads, also from our planner.
Okay, thank you. So we have two ordinances before the board tonight. I'll go over the first one as stated, which is the health and wellness ordinance. So I'll talk briefly about how we got here and the impetus of the why behind why this is before you, or in front of you tonight. So probably maybe a year ago now, we had a health and wellness studio come into the Four Quarters area. We were reviewing that in the building department for some trades work they were having done. And it came up from our township assessor, who has a fantastic memory. It's almost like a superpower, it's insane. That there was an ordinance that may be 20 years old, and it may be in the basement, and it might apply to this land use. And sure enough, she went down there and she found it, and we took a look at it, and we got concerned immediately because of how some of the language was phrased in the ordinance. We didn't think it was enforceable, and we thought it was problematic. So myself and Beth brought it to the superintendent's office, and we requested if we could get clearance to have legal take a review of it. We did send it to our legal firm. Under their guidance, they also concurred that this was an unenforceable ordinance. just to go over like some high level things that were problematic with the ordinance. One, whenever you write an ordinance, it's fine to write an ordinance that's specific to an industry, but you never wanna write an ordinance that would be so specific, it's almost like it's written for one business in particular. Because then it's almost like you're trying to create a separate set of rules for them versus everybody else. That's problematic. So on its face, it did appear that it was engaging in some of that language. Most notably, I think municipalities have probably gotten in trouble with this, correct me if I'm wrong, around signage. It's good, you can, if you wanna create a standard that is a dimensional standard, that's fine, but if you get into trying to regulate content of a specific sign, you're gonna get into a problem. And then the second one was, they were trying through a regulatory ordinance to, create civil violations that were already criminally illegal. So if there was some illicit activity taking place at any land use in the township, you should call 911, you shouldn't call the code enforcement officer or the planning department. So with those two broad takeaways, it was the recommendation to wholly delete this ordinance and then craft a much simpler, some zoning language that would cover this land use. And then we also updated the land use, massage places typically don't go by massage parlor, they'll go by health and wellness studio these days. So we tried to update our language to be in tune with modern times and the words people use. And while we're at it, we also cleaned up the land use offices, just because it's been a land use that, as the supervisor knows, has been debated in recent years, but not defined in our ordinance. So we thought it was probably a good opportunity and time to define what an office is. So, yeah. Any questions around what we think we should do there? Really, I don't know how else to say it besides we deleted a vast amount of text that under the advice of our legal counsel, and added a couple of definitions and a couple of new land use categories.
If you want to see the former text, the planner can give it to you, but it may make you blush.
Yeah.
It was quite an interesting read.
In terms of what was not allowed?
The specificity of the
Okay.
activity that they did not want to see happening in the
As I was
township.
as I was reading through this list, I was thinking to myself, well, I can't think of any other type of establishment that wouldn't be on this list. What could it be? But now I know what that might
Right,
be. So
right.
thank you.
Any other questions for the planner before we talk about the next ordinance? These will be on the agenda in January for us to approve or not. All right, why don't you hit us with the second one?
Great. So yeah, that seemed like a pretty low-hanging fruit and pretty easy win for the township. This next ordinance is not as low-hanging fruit and not as easy to orchestrate. This has been at the planning commission for quite some time now. I would say vigorously debated amongst not only staff and how we approached it and our partnering agencies, but among the members themselves. So this is the private drives and roads ordinance. We are making a distinction there, and it is defined within the ordinance. There's really three things we're talking about here. Streets, which are public streets, roads, which we're defining as private roads, and drives, which we're defining as private drives. So drives essentially is the easiest one, I guess, to understand. Right now, if you build a home or you're looking to establish a driveway, you apply to the Plain County Road Commission for a driveway permit. All we're seeking to do in this ordinance is allow driveways to serve not just one home, but two. This is a use that's already allowed in the township under the condo language. We have a number of site condominiums where there's 2 condos served by 1 driveway. So we thought, why not allow this to also take place in regards to single-family residence? There's a number of parcels where this could be applicable in the township. Now, again, there's a series of controlling devices throughout this ordinance. Because with an ordinance of this type, and we talked about this at the planning commission, there's going to be externalities created That's something that we try to look out for in crafting this language and the control measures we put in place. So I would advise you guys to take a close read and, you know, let us know any feedback after you've had some time to review over the next 2 weeks. With that being said, ordinances aren't something that have to be set in stone. If this ordinance was to get enacted and we saw some number of negative externalities, or it was being implemented in a way we didn't foresee, we could always put a moratorium on this activity, take it back, amend the ordinance. It's not like we're doomed here if this passes or fails. It's one of those things in our society where it's complex and there's a number of agencies involved. I think there were externalities when private drives were removed in 2016. They were no longer permitted in the township, and there's been an effect from that as well, in ways that I don't think people foresaw at the time. And so, I'm not here to stand up and say like everything's gonna be fine, it's all gonna be good. There's controls in place, and I think this is a well-regulated ordinance. I think there will be effects on the township and how that all plays out. Now, the impetus of why this is coming, why this was brought, just to talk about that a little bit, is this is actually a text amendment request from a resident. I don't think he would mind me saying he's been, I guess, a matter of public record, because he has been on the record at planning commission meetings, but Mr. Kessler has a series of properties he's interested in developing in the township, and he'd like the ability to have private roads, as we define them, to help develop those parcels. I've probably talked about this before in front of the board, but if you're not aware, the country is in a housing crisis. Housing is in starkly short supply. The barriers to entry to develop new affordable housing are ever growing. My industry has reckoned with, over the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years, the impact that planning has had on that, and the burdensome regulation that we have instituted, be it large lot zoning, or a number of other mechanisms that increase the cost to bring housing to market. Private roads are a way to deregulate the development of single-family homes. It's one element that you could get at. So that was the request from the developer. Obviously, I guess on the township side, we have faith in Mr. Kessler to bring good developments to the township. He has always in the past. However, this ordinance wouldn't just apply to Mr. Kessler. So we went all in on developing the most safeguarded ordinance we could to still allow a path with private drives, but having the controls in place. We did that by working with our township engineer, the road commission, the drain commission, and a few other agencies. So this ordinance was crafted, went out, got agency review, came back, was edited, went out for more agency review, came back, was edited. So it did become a little bit of a built-out ordinance, a little bit of a complex ordinance where different sections feed off of each other and into each other. But, yeah, so that's the why, and that's a little bit, the last thing I'll say about this ordinance, because I know it's been going on for a while now, is we did try to break the private roads into 2 different categories, a small private road and a large private road, and the barriers to entry to establish those roads are different. As you move up in scale, the more regulations that would apply. So kind of the lowest barrier to entry would just be a private drive, 2 houses, then private road is 3, small private road is 3 to 6 homes, and a large private road is 7 to 12. As you move up in scale, you move up in regulation, you move up in design standards.
What about a development over 12? Does that
It's
have,
gotta be a public road.
it's a, has to be a
So,
public road?
A public
Okay.
street. as we
Public
define it.
street. Does a public street then come with the public infrastructure,
A
like
public street
snow plowing and paving, for example?
Correct, and those standards and all the maintenance requirements of a public street are set by the Plain County Road Commission.
So they would give approval?
They would give approval
Okay.
of acceptance of the road. The developer would have to work with the road commission to determine what those standards are. and then the road commission would set their normal maintenance practices.
One of the reasons that we took away public roads, I think I was the only person on the board that's still here back then, was because of this issue of not being up to sort of public road quality. And most of these places are governed by like an HOA type of agreement, which really relies on the residents to self-govern. Some HOAs are really good at that, some are not. I'll use mine as an example. Over in Mead Creek, we had to repave the road, and when you repave a road, as we all know, it's really, really expensive. And if your HOA doesn't plan for that enough in the future, all of a sudden, every resident gets a big bill to repave the road, and it causes turmoil and, you know, neighbor against neighbor angst, and it's part of the reason we stopped doing public roads is because, or excuse me, private roads, is because folks would come up to the township and say, my neighbor, take this road, and why can't we turn the road over? And even if the county had wanted to take the road on, it's not built up to public road standards. And I don't think the county ever wanted to take the road either. So that was one of the primary reasons we sort of banned them from the township back, I think it was earlier than 2016. Can you talk about what we've done in here to help? Yeah, I don't know that it solves it, but it might push us closer.
Mitigate might be a strong word. What we've tried to do is give citizens or developers that engage in the use of a private drive and or private road the ability to self-govern. And we've tried to do that in two ways, through two different legal agreements that they will be required to establish with all parcels served by the newly created road. So access agreement to guarantee that any landowner would have access to and the ability to use said road and or drive, and the maintenance agreement. Now we've, in partnership with our legal counsel, worked to give two boilerplate agreements for the developers to use in the ordinance. And we're saying, hey, we've created these are what we think would be useful, we recommend you build language like this. We also, though, have realized that every development is unique, and every development is gonna have its own challenges, and its own features, and its own drainage, and its own soil types. So you can't say like this is a one-size-fits-all maintenance agreement. So we said, this is the language that we recommend. You need to bring something similar to this to the planning commission when you're under review for a private road permit. Our intention is that that maintenance agreement the requirement is that maintenance agreement will then be accepted by the planning commission and put on file with the register of deeds. Then giving the landowners the ability to self-govern. So if there's one holdout house that doesn't want to pay for the plowing services, they can just, every other landowner could go to the register of deeds and pull out their maintenance agreement, even if the home is bought and sold over the generations, and say, it says right here, you have to pay 10% a year of this, because that's what we've all determined, instead of them having to call the township and being like, I hate my neighbor, he never helps. And then we're sitting there like, it's a private road, it's a civil matter, good luck. Which it still would be a private road, and it still would be a civil matter. That's why I think mitigate might be a strong word, but at least now it's a civil matter with an agreement in place. As before, I have no idea what's in place.
Thanks, Miles. Questions?
Yeah, Miles, when you said through the buying and selling of property, it tweaked my attention. So is it just strictly gonna be kind of like a buyer beware situation, or is there some connection that the buyer will actually be made aware of what this maintenance agreement and some of those things are ahead of time, so they don't go, well, we never knew that this was part of?
Well, I think you might, and that's why I think mitigate might be a strong word. The responsibility for any landowner is always on them to know what they're buying. And trust me, these agreements are not even the most, these are maybe you could even say obscure. I mean, people don't even know where the fence line is when they buy and sell property, so it's crazy. We see all kinds of stuff. But it will be in there, it'll be a part of their deeds.
Part of the deed, okay.
There is that title work being done, it is there for them to reveal. How many people, when they're sitting at the table signing 200 documents, read every page? I can't speak to that.
Yeah, good, thank you.
That is definitely one of the issues that I see with my neighbors, is folks don't know what an HOA is, doesn't know what that means, and then a year later find out.
Now I
means
know what
some
it
cash.
means.
Right, right,
Now
and
we
they're
know what
unhappy
it
with
means.
it. Yes, right. Other questions? Oh, go ahead.
I just noticed here, it does say that private drives are prohibited in rural areas. Could you give me an example, I guess, of
Private drives and roads.
what areas might be considered rural versus like low-density residential, and what's the reason to prohibit them?
Yeah, great question. It will, as defined in the township as a rural zoning district, so it's largely the northern part of that. The only part north of 69 that maybe isn't rural is, the, so you go downtown, I think, Supervisor's got a map there. Everything in white on that map is rural.
My drawer.
And the emphasis of why that is there's a kind of a buzzword in urban planning called urban sprawl. It's not a good thing. We try to limit urban sprawl, so we like to keep the rural areas rural, and that's called for in our comprehensive plan, which is our department and the planning commission's guiding document, and we felt like that was a good mechanism to limit urban sprawl.
Follow-up question? Thanks for asking that question, Kate, because I had the same one. So we're in the rural zone, and there's enough frontage to put two homes back there. You're saying they have to have two separate drives on, they can't share drives? Okay, very good. Thank you.
If they have the acreage, they could also always look into a parcel split, but even then, I guess it's still require two separate drives.
Other questions? All right, this too will come back to us for the first reading in January.
Correct.
Sherry, did you want to see the map?
I think we may have unintentionally skipped over the planning development update. And I'm wondering if Mr. Robler could do that now.
Oh, because it was after the planning commission.
Yep. Great idea.
Whoops.
I even have it checked off right here, as if we had done it.
Moving right along.
Yeah.
In this moment, I'm bringing up the map. It's been a busy year. Great.
So I asked if Miles could be on our agenda today to talk about this. He does this for the planning commission every so often, gives an update on what we've approved and whether people have broken ground, whether they're, operating. And I thought that was probably equally as interesting to you all. We don't often get to know what's happening to the projects until we drive by and see people, in Taco Bell. So I thought if Miles is open to it, at least quarterly, he could come and tell us the things that have been approved, where they are in their development.
Yeah, great. So I'll break this down into a couple categories. First, go over what was issued in 2023, what's currently under review in 2023, see it, and then the second category would be C of O's, so certifications of occupancy that were issued this year. And then the last category is, I'll talk about just speculating wildly about what we think might happen. And this is all in the commercial development space, mind you, so not residential, not single-family homes. So we'll start with Saginaw corridor, because that's obviously where the most activity is taking place in the township and probably where people are most interested. Just note this imagery is from 2019, fingers crossed for the county to update this. But the Ace Hardware that everyone's probably seen is here. This was amended in, their site plan was amended in 2023. They gained their approval in 2022, but we kind of been in this construction site plan amendment phase this entire year. One of those amendments actually took place with Monticello's, where they instituted a connecting drive right there. So if you've been in Monticello's parking lot, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, because I know people get fired up about how to pronounce that. You notice that there is a connecting drive there now. Across the street, you notice there's a surgical center that's been going up. Again, that's been, their site plan has also been amended this year. Again, they got their original approval in end of 2022. And then moving up here, we issued an SUP for Sunrise Forest. That's the four-unit commercial space there. The SUP issue was under the land uses of adult use marijuana, if everyone remembers that. And then their site plan was also amended to include a drive for the marijuana land use. We'll go over here now to.
Can I interrupt you just a moment?
Yes.
Were Taco Bell and Big B, have I lost all sense of time that they didn't enter in this year?
I know.
Yeah, no, Taco Bell was 2022, and Big B probably feels like it was in 2023, it's very end of 2022.
Okay.
They never needed anything amended, but they've been just building out all of
Okay.
2023, so that's why when we get to, while we're in this area, I'll just cover C of O, so we don't have to come back here. Big B, the surgical center, and Ace Hardware have all now gained C of O. As of right now, Big B obviously is in operation, Taco Bell is obviously in operation, they gained C of O in 2022. And then Ace Hardware is not in operation yet, but from what I hear, they're going for January, so we'll see. Fingers crossed on that.
And Miles, is C of O like the last thing that they need to start operating?
That's correct.
Certificate of
And
occupancy.
there's full C of O, and then we've been using temporary C of Os on some of these now. I'll get to temporary C of O here. And the surgical center has been issued C of O. It's the last thing we need for them to operate. Now with the surgical center, there's a number of state regulations and medical boards and different approvals they have to go through. They won't begin operating for another 6 months probably. Once they're all done with us, they've got a while to go. And I don't know that side of things, so that's a little bit outside of the world, so I won't try to talk about that. We do have a temporary C of O for not for the individual units within shopping centers. Shopping centers are weird how they're treated with C of Os. The individual units get C of Os themselves, and then the structure as a whole has a separate C of O. Each of the units in operation have a full C of O issue. The structure itself is still on a temporary C of O. That's because of some signage that is yet to be installed, and then some metal screening behind that signage that's yet to be installed. So we're working with the developer on that.
So everybody's asking about the bagel place. Is that still gonna happen?
We don't know.
It's still, as far as I know, it's still happening. It's just, the only thing I can speak to is, it's hard to work with some of these franchises. The owner's working with their franchise, they're trying to get things rolling. That's about the conclusion of what I know. But yeah, we're asking about it all the time too. Not too many lunch spots around here, and we can't eat Jimmy's Pub every day, so. Okay, so the next development that was reviewed in 2023 for a site plan amendment, a SUP was issued in 22, and then the project was pulled by the developer. They say they're gonna come back when market conditions improve, but that's Park Lake Apartments. So it is now a 3-structure development with 40 units. Basically, market conditions and the commercial real estate space, as you guys are aware, I'm sure, interest rates are high right now. Money is expensive, and so they're waiting for money to become cheaper. So we'll hope, fingers crossed that that works out for them. No idea what's gonna happen there. I don't think anybody knows. This property owned by the Ides within the Somerset development, it's currently under zoning review. They just introduced a project at the last planning commission meeting for a number of townhomes. They're calling them townhomes. I would call them practically condominiums, that's how they look. I think under the state building code, they'd be classified as condominiums and not townhomes. So about 80-something units they're looking to do there, so a large development, and they want those to be rentals, so that's important to note as well. Obviously, probably the biggest development that got zoning review and an SUP issued this year, of course, is Norman Fastener to be located here. And then 2 more to go. Up here on Slate Road, we had one of our first home business SUPs issued. That was for the coffee, right here on this parcel. That was for that kind of coffee stand. They wanted to sell coffee on the weekends, and they gained approval from this board for a home business SUP. I guess I'll take this opportunity to encourage anybody that's watching or listening, or anybody that is reading future minutes. If you are operating a home business and you want to see if you can, if a home business SUP applies to you, just please reach out to the planning department. We've tried to really lower the barriers to entry to make it very easy for people operating side businesses out of their house to be all permitted and not feel like they have to, it's some secret that you're operating a business at your house. We want you to be successful in this township, and we've tried to create a device to allow that to happen.
Miles, quick question.
Yeah,
Is that application online?
it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the planning department's page. And then the last one that I'll talk about is a warehouse development for a landscaper on this property on Peacock Road. The site plan was amended in 2023 and the SUP was issued in 2023, and it's currently in the construction review phase right now. So they're looking to build a 5-bay warehouse. It's a local lawn and landscaping company. And that's all I got.
Okay.
Well, I guess then briefly, just to speculate wildly, I guess, about what the future could hold. The only one that I even feel confident bringing up would be this property, which is owned by HDI Builders. They've now built out all of these parcels that you can see were undeveloped on this aerial imagery are now developed in single-family homes. I think only these 3 back here are awaiting C of O to be issued, so that means the developer's got to get rolling on making some new lots here. We expect that'll come sometime this winter. Doing some investigating and some measuring, they could probably get anywhere from 40 to 60 homes on there.
Thank you. This board might recognize that because at one time, I think they were looking to have that land go into a conservancy, is that correct?
I don't know about that one.
Okay.
That might have been.
I think she's thinking of one that was over off.
Or are you thinking of Bonnie Meadows?
Peacock,
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
Peacock,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. I thought it was this one and not that
Is
one.
it-
My
That's
apologies.
where the
My
lake was.
apologies.
That land is much more preservable than the other.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that, so.
Okay.
But,
My
yeah,
apologies
that's
for
another
mixing the
one
two
where
of them up.
something could
Yeah.
happen. I'm just unclear of what could happen over here.
Okay.
I mean, they had the ability to bring in a road and divide this out. They had the ability to put one very large home there.
Thank you for clearing that up for me.
All right.
Questions for Miles? Do you see buildings slowing down in 2024, staying the same?
Yeah.
And we're going to hold you to whatever you say right now?
I love talking about the economy, as everyone in our office probably knows and hates, because I talk about it a lot. But I would say that we probably are going to see a slowdown. I think most people think that. I think the Fed has now indicated that they will be doing some interest rate cutting in 2024. They're trying to achieve this soft landing that they've been talking about a lot. I and no one else, including the Fed or any economist really, knows when or how much that cutting is going to look like. Either way, I think their goal right now is to cause pain in the economy, and I think they will achieve that goal, and I think 2024 is gonna be a painful year for the economy. That's not great news. I think that's how it is. The good news is Michigan has never saw the lows or the highs that other states see. We've always been a pretty even keel. Obviously, you know, especially the Detroit area, got hit really hard in the recession. The Lansing area didn't fare too bad, just from the data that I've seen. I think we're, as far as in the micro scale things, like at Township, I think we're pretty well suited to ride this out. I don't see our local economy taking a super hard hit, so that's the good news.
That's helpful, thank you. Any last questions for Miles? Go ahead.
A comment, maybe you can help me with the number. Hannah Horde from our building department did say today that she thinks this time last year we had approximately, I think she said 115 residential permits had been issued, and I believe this year we're at like 160. So 66, thank you. So we are up in terms of residential housing buildings going on.
Yeah, me and Hannah were looking at that earlier today. So the zoning permits last year were 104. As of today, we're at 119. Building was at like 130 something, or it was less than that. It was like, yeah, 115.
I think it was like
or
115, 119.
Yeah, now it's like 166. So, and 2022 was a busy year as well. So 2023 was really, I mean, it's going to be hard to exceed those year-over-year numbers, regardless of what's going on in the economy, just because it was such a build-out year for the township. So, yeah, good year for the township, lots of exciting things. Obviously, I think we're going to have still lots of construction next year, so everyone pay attention to the road signs and what the road commission, where they want us to drive.
Thanks, Miles. Hopefully that was helpful for the board and anybody else watching to learn about where we're at in our build-out phases. So that brings us to item D, new D that we created, the fire department request. Am I turning that over to you, Superintendent, or to the chief?
To the chief, please.
Great.
Dave Snyder, Fire Chief. As you have in front of you is a proposal for 2 fire trucks. Our current fire trucks, one of them is in the line for replacement. It's 21 years old, and the next one is 19 years old. So as we started into this about 8 months ago, it became apparent that, you know, the build-out time is part of the ridiculous part of it, literally, because the trucks we're looking at tonight, the ones that we're proposing here, if we order them, they're gonna be a year and a half before we see them. So we did, like I said, we did do a lot of our homework. We've had multiple companies that we've met with, and to meet with our specs and find out what we want, what we need. We are at the point where some of the parts on the current engines that we've got that are in the 19, 21 year age are irreplaceable. You have to retrofit something else to it. So the proposal wound up being buying both trucks at the same time. One was a 2,000 gallon pumper that we would use more rural, which currently we're at 1,000 and 1,000. So we would use a 2,000 gallon truck more rural and the 1,000 gallon truck more in the high density areas. So one's a little bigger than the other, but basically the same truck. Be able to literally get from one into the other in your sleep, and all the operating mechanisms would be the same. So at this point, this was nowhere meant to be shoving it down your throat at this late in the year. It's just the way everything came together, and these specification books, this is like almost every nut and bolt that goes into one truck, and there's a book for each truck. So with the 545 days that they're saying it would take to make this, we're proposing the purchase of both trucks at the same time. There was savings with that, purchasing of both at the same time. There are multiple through EV Plus and other organizations, there's multiple financing financing available, whether we lease it, whether we buy it on a 10-year term. Previously, we bought them on a stretched out term. Truck payments are usually like one payment a year. It's kind of a strange system that they do with big trucks and things like that. But there's lots of options there. I did not delve into financing of it. I delved into building it, and we delved into building it, and then requesting what we're looking for. So financing, I don't know. The problem that we do have, it's a slight problem, but a big problem, is that if we can't get this done by December 31st, we can still get the same 2 trucks, but the price is gonna go up by 6%. Which doesn't sound like a lot, and like I said, this was nowhere meant to shove this down your throat. This is as soon as we can kind of pull this whole thing together.
If we're looking, so if we're not able to sign by December 31st, we're looking at roughly $113,000 increase. So we go from $1,890,039 to $2,003,441.34. With looking in the proposal letter that the company provided, there were some other savings. We were able to save another $35,000 if the township chose to pay for the chassis upon completion, which would be roughly 180 days from the signing of the contract. There was also $108,000 price savings if we were able to pay 100% within 15 days of the contract being signed. There was an $86,000 price savings if we paid 75% prepayment within 15 days. And then also if we did a 50% prepayment, there was another $58,000 that could be saved. So there are savings that are out there depending on how the board decides to act.
The other thing I wanted to kind of explain on the first cover sheet that you got there where it talks about the pricing through Sourcewell, that is a consortium for purchasing that is basically everybody that is included in Sourcewell, which we are, the township is, and the fire department is. It's like a government approved bid, and so we don't have to do multiple bids. The other company that we had a serious discussion with still hasn't gotten us back even a bare quote. This is a huge gig, and it's like I said, it's a lot of work for companies and salesmen and everything else, so, and we've been trying, guys.
If I may,
Okay, questions?
would you explain, I know that you met with a Pierce salesman to go over speccing these trucks. Can you explain a little bit about how that process went?
The process with Pierce did not go well at all. He didn't seem to really want to talk to us. I felt when we got done that he was trying to give us all the pitfalls, that it was going to be up to 3 years before we got a truck, and there was going to be a waiver of 5% signed before we even signed any paperwork to do a truck, because that's the way that gives them flexibility to put an increase in there anytime they want. We had 4 of us in that meeting. We got done with the meeting and he left, and 3 of us looked at each other and went, what was that? Because we met with this gentleman, and this is not my first truck, but we've met with this gentleman before, and this is the first time we've bought from this company, other than we've used EV Plus for buying other equipment, but not fire trucks. It was Rosenbauer. But we met with this gentleman, and he sat down with his laptop and said, what do you want here, what do you want there, how do you want to do this, and do you think this would be a better idea? And so he worked with us and tried to tell us what does work, what doesn't work, and he was ready to talk, so to speak, as far as what will fit and what won't fit, what we can do, what we can't do. And so that's why we got to this point.
Can you talk a little bit about your replacement schedule thoughts for additional trucks besides these 2 looking over the next 10 to 15 years?
We gotta look that over. Quite possibly our light and air truck would need replacing in that time. We've been looking for a good used one because of that, because it has some gremlins, but everything we keep making it work. Other than that, I think we're down to our grass rigs. We need to take a hard look at our replacement, what needs to be replaced over the next 10 years. These two obviously should be serviceable for a good long time. We're at the 20-year mark on the two we've got roughly, and so I don't think there would be any problem. The other thing, the two we've got would make a great truck for somewhere else, and those are saleable. There are truck brokers out there to sell fire trucks. We don't need two extra ones, obviously. So that is another money back in, but I can't tell you what it's gonna be, that, you know, the used fire truck market at the time and all that kind of thing, so I don't know what that would be.
Sorry that I
Just
missed.
keep going.
Okay. I did have the question today from one of the board members that I know from my experience as Spartan Chassis, they used to say trucks were, 10 to 15 years shelf life. You obviously have gotten, I think, 19 and 21 out of the ones we have. The question was, because we don't go on as many structure fires, does that extend the lifetime of the trucks that we have?
It does. There are some things nowadays that need to be added as far as replacing, the truck. There's gonna be seatbelt buzzers that the truck won't roll and without so the technology is increased.
Okay.
As
So
far
some of
as
the safety
and things like that
features,
goes.
okay.
Correct. We do take care of our trucks. I feel that we've always had a pretty good history of taking care of our trucks, and they don't run on every little call. A lot of larger departments, they run a rescue like we do, or an ambulance, and then they'll send an engine with more people. So that engine has just got constant miles on it, getting hammered on it every day. And that's not the way we currently operate, so we're not wearing them out.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, board members, questions? Go ahead, Al.
We have put some money aside, right? Do you remember how much that is?
So at this time, I believe we put aside $100,000 when former Superintendent Waticha was here. I need to go back and locate that in an audit so that I can track back where that action happened at the board. But I think you are
I can see in the
correct.
audit here that there's 281,000 in
Okay,
the
baby,
public but not public safety fund balance, but restricted for public safety.
So that may
Restricted,
be
yeah.
the action that I need to look, to identify where it was restricted or committed to the purchase of fire trucks.
Yeah, but I think that's in the general fund balance.
Okay. I
From
would have to check that.
my layman's understanding of what's in front of me.
And that's probably correct, because at the time Superintendent Waticha was here, we did not have the public safety fund yet.
Right.
It was still in the general fund, so that would make sense.
Yes, there was this lore passed down to me from the elders of the community when I was on the board the first time, that there was $200,000 sitting in an account somewhere for a truck.
I think it was
somewhere in the
probably
future.
Mr. Libby, and he was on police and fire for quite a long time, and I think he was the one that kept bringing it to our attention that we had committed or restricted those funds and that's what they were for.
I think the question here is apt, right, and timely, but we should probably dig in and figure out
Yes.
what all of these restrictions are for.
Correct. There was a conversation today in the office that, because most of us are new or weren't in our positions at that time, we don't necessarily know what those committed or restricted funds were committed or restricted for, and we need to figure that out.
Did you ask Beth?
Surprisingly, she'd probably have some
I
answers.
mean, it seems like a good idea. Other questions from the board? Go ahead, Jack.
Just a comment, it seemed like one time there were 3 differently restricted funds when Dan was here that I recall, but I don't know what their assignments were, and I'm trying to focus on what year that was, and I can't right now. The question I have for you, Chief, is from a former experience I had, I want to say there's a difference between having a truck with all the moving parts and having a truck that's actually operational with all the things that need to be with that truck to make it operational. I don't know if that was involved in your bid specs here, or if you could add that at a later time, plus some of the other information you provided for us, so we can actually see the numbers on paper. But yeah, having it, I I don't know how to say it other than that, having it one that works and actually totally operational, two different things, and I just wanna make sure we don't try and climb that mountain again.
Nope, these would be coming, it's in the spec book, and anytime anybody wants to take a look at that,
Where's
I
the
got
other
no
one?
problem with that. Yeah, there's one there too, that's for, one of them's listed for the 1,000 gallon, one listed for the 2,000. Things that are there are ladders and things like that that would all be new and functional when they arrive. Hose, we have a pretty good assortment of, as far as our hoses complement, we have a good complement of hose, which would come off one truck and put it on another truck. And it's all been passing hose testing that we have independently done every year. So I think we're sitting good on hose, which is really expensive. We replaced some this year and I couldn't believe the price of what hose is. So, but I think we're okay there. We don't need to put those into the price of the truck. There will be some hand tools and things like that. Radio installations that are included, things like that, that, you know, there's always gonna be the unforeseen, but we're trying to foresee everything we can.
Yeah, as much as you can predict, because, you know, it is just, a couple thousand here and a couple thousand there, and pretty soon it's real money, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
okay, yeah.
Other questions?
I just have a question. How come it, like, you knew this was going to happen and you guys haven't put this in your budget for the last 10 years to say, let's save 200,000, but you haven't budgeted for that?
I don't know how to answer that question. It was never, so to speak, put in there as budgeted. I was always told that what we didn't use dropped down into a truck fund. And that's why there's never been a line item of $200,000.
Equipment purchase?
Correct.
That's definitely not what was happening.
Oh, that's, I mean, like,
Go ahead, Sherry.
It looks like we're expanding our population, our buildings and whatever, and we sure as heck don't want to have a fire truck that doesn't work. I think it's terribly important as our police force being armed correctly and safety shields. Fire trucks are very important, and we're growing crazy. It's a lot of money, but
you have a
it's a very
suggestion on where to
important-
get the money?
I'm just saying, some things are important, some aren't so important, but with more housing, this is a biggie. You don't want to have your house on fire and say, oops, our truck doesn't work, and they're 20 years old. Just a thought.
Yeah, so Karen, if we were to approve this and add that to the sort of fund balance drawdown that we just approved 2 weeks ago, that's it.
Correct.
That's all the money.
Correct.
So do you have thoughts on, are you recommending this? Do you have thoughts on financing?
I do think that it is a fairly new concept to me. I was not here when we purchased prior trucks, but having, it's almost like when we bond, we have 1 or 2 payments a year. The leasing program is certainly something that I think we could and should look into. Being a member of Sourcewell as well, so we can have that competitive pricing, I think would be critically important. But to say, it's very possible that $200,000 for the next, 9 years, because there's 200,000 in the 2024 budget, but it's likely that we would have to have at least 200,000 in the budget for the next 9 years after that, to take care of these payments, and that's without considering interest. So, long-term commitment.
Do you know where we'd go for financing?
I don't, there's some recommendations
Yeah, in the packet.
through,
I'm not sure if it's totally in all your packets or not, but they
I
have a
think
company that they deal with, and the salesman says that
Those are
they will do
prepayment
anything you wanna
options.
do. If you wanna make
Just prepayment
$10
options,
payments
it's
a
not
week,
lease
they'll do,
options.
they literally are very flexible when it comes to.
That sounds like a winner.
Apparently, they're very flexible when it comes to purchasing these kind of things, because it is a lot of money, and they know it's a lot of money, and everybody's doing this, and so it's nothing that you can save, literally, you can.
oh,
In the binder, there's an actual recommendation, from Emergency Vehicles Plus of one that jurisdictions they've dealt with have used in the past.
okay.
And I assume, Jennifer, you haven't looked into any financing on this?
No, because this is the first time I've heard of it.
Okay. Other question? Oh, thank you. The bell.
How does this relate to the police and fire millage that we have? Is this something that could coordinate with that could become part of that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think if, we've talked about the need to perhaps raise that or other revenue. Certainly, I mentioned this to Karen, we're moving about $1 million from general fund into police and fire right now. So to go to the voters and say, raise the millage because we don't want to transfer that much money, it's not a very compelling ask. It is financially for us, but for people who are voting. But certainly purchasing a new fire truck makes sense to people and is very tangible to them. So that could be an option, but we'd still have to figure out financing.
Correct.
Because we won't look at the new police and fire millage until next year.
It's already been touched on, but also, I mean, the financing, it'd be nice, I think it is a good selling point for a millage increase. But in the event, and we're already drawn down more than we're gonna have pretty soon, that's gonna be just absolutely crucial. Because if we're gonna be making payments with money we don't have, if the millage does not go through. And then I don't know, did they explain to you how they repo a fire truck? I'm just joking.
Unless he's the guy that comes with it.
Other questions? Go ahead, Al.
We have got to sign something to order the truck before December, is that right? Before the end of December?
So it looks like if I'm citing the proper information, they have indicated that on January 1st, 2024, there will be a 6% price increase for all apparatus.
Fire, the salesman says that Rosenbauer says there's no fudging that. Previous years, apparently they said, well, okay, yeah, you signed it January 10th, and so, but he says January 1, they're pretty firm, it's going up 6%, period. And like I said, this is not to try to shove it down your throats, and I apologize, it's just trying to get everything together to present to you folks was our problem.
Yeah.
I'll speak for myself. I'm motivated to solve this problem, and the cash savings is certainly enticing. I don't think I could support this without the financing piece. I think that would be incredibly, malfeasance to vote on $2 million without any sort of financing. Karen, do you have a recommendation for us? What do you think about this? Is this something we could also add to our special meeting agenda? Should we have that?
I think if you would agree on that, I think that the treasurer and I could first of all, have the township become a member of Sourcewell, and then investigate the lease purchase financing options that are available in this binder from Chief, and bring back more information to make a better informed decision. During that time, too, we could also figure out the $281,000 and what that was committed or restricted for, to put us in a better position to make that decision. Because at that time, you're looking at, $500,000 instead of what we have in the budget for next year.
Yeah, if we go that route, I would encourage talking to some of our current lenders who may give us good rates because of our customer
And it seems like there must be
status.
some way to get some ballpark of what a used fire truck could bring in, selling the old ones to pay back
There
some
are
of that
sites
balance.
where those things are available, and we could get a sense of that just from looking at what sales have been made in the area or in the surrounding states.
Could you guys include that as kind of a consideration for our next meeting to just, ballpark it as close as you can, but when it's, at least for me, and again, I'm only speaking for myself, when I can actually see the numbers in front of me on a piece of paper, it makes a huge difference in the decision-making process.
other questions?
Thank you, gentlemen. Will you be available to board members if they'd like to chat more about this? Thank you. All right, that brings us to items for action, special meeting for consideration of final budget amendments, and perhaps fire vehicles.
I know the timing of this is very awkward because of the holidays. We would be looking at next week for a potential meeting, 26, 27, 28. This would be, the accountant will be in our office on Wednesday, and the treasurer and I will be working with him on these amendments and to see where other financial transfers may need to take place. So we would probably have a good idea, the middle of this week, whether or not that meeting would be needed. It's your pleasure whether you want to have a couple of members call for a special meeting if it might be needed, or walk away here tonight knowing that we've scheduled something and that it can be canceled if it's not needed. It's really your pleasure on how you would like to approach that. We could combine both the any needed budget amendments and the financing of a fire trucks, I should say. Those could be the reasons on the posting.
Yeah, if you as our chief administrative officer think we should think deeply about moving on these fire trucks this year, it seems like we probably need to set the meeting and keep it.
Okay.
I mean,
I would prefer that, but it really, I'm always at the pleasure of the board, so I would prefer that.
yeah, I mean, to me, it's the decision of either we're gonna do the fire trucks, or consider the fire trucks or not. And if the answer is no, then we don't, but it felt like the consensus was more information was wanted, needed. Do you want us to get our calendars out? Would that be helpful?
If, I would love to walk out of here tonight with a date and time. I know that maybe perhaps some of you weren't ready to make that commitment tonight, but I would appreciate that.
I know some of you may be traveling out of town for the holidays or for other reasons. I'm happy to take a phone call with any of you at any point for you to give feedback on the fire truck situation and to share that feedback at the meeting. So you at least have a voice at the table. I don't want anybody to change their vacation plans.
Anybody got a better day than another?
Tuesday or Wednesday?
The planning commission's not meeting on the 26th, right?
Correct.
That night just
Beat me
freed
to
up.
it.
Yeah, but do we want to do it on a Tuesday after the holiday?
Are you gonna have enough time? I mean, that's the rest of this week, basically. The 4 days remaining this week would be all.
Well, not even that,
Correct.
we're closed Friday.
Not anymore.
I mean, maybe if we waited till Thursday, that might give you,
If we
And
do,
then are they
if
closed
we
on-
can do it on the
closed on
28th,
Friday?
that might work better
I don't know.
because then.
Because we're closed on Friday.
You and I have
rather
more
because
time
of
to
New Year's
figure
Eve.
out financing.
all right.
If we
So-
even can get
So
anything
Thursday, the
together.
28th might be the sweet spot.
I mean,
Well, are they closed
that's not
on
even, I
Friday,
mean,
though?
it's barely a
It's
week.
like we're closed on Friday for New Year's Eve. Would this company be closed on Friday?
Well, it says by January 31st, right?
For-
Or December
First.
31st. Right, at midnight or something like, I thought it was very specific.
Midnight on the 31st.
Did you want to ring in the new year with us, Kate?
Yeah, December 31st at midnight.
Bring your hats and
Sure.
your glasses. We'll be talking fire trucks.
But I mean, I think that still makes Thursday a option to make a decision. And then is it the chief's problem at that point to communicate it to the company?
I think you
I
should give them a
think-
couple more days. I think you should either have it on Tuesday or Wednesday.
They probably want to check first.
We'll probably have to make some sort of formal commitment to them.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
my thought is if they want a $2 million sale, they'll take the phone call.
Well, I'm quite sure, yeah, but
If not, I'll get into that business and
There you
take the
go.
phone call.
Wednesday feels like it keeps popping up for several of you.
I can do Wednesday or Thursday.
I'm gone next week.
You're gone.
Anybody else gone?
I don't have my social director with me tonight.
You don't
Sounds
know,
like
Lisa
there's
Scott
Get her on the
Blair.
four of
phone.
us.
There'll be at least 4 of us, so, yeah.
I hate to do a big decision like that with minimal
No, I'll,
buy-in,
I mean,
but we're running out of time,
You'll
so I guess
voice
we
your
have
opinion,
to.
whether here in
I'll-
person or in writing.
I'll give it my
Okay.
best.
So are we
college
looking
effort
at
to be here.
Wednesday,
Wednesday or
Brian?
Thursday?
Or
Wednesday, the 27th, or Thursday, the 28th are, I think, our options.
I think Wednesday.
Wednesday?
And now you have the decision of 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock.
Thursday? I say 5.
Heck, I could do it at
Wednesday, I
noon
can
that
make it
day.
5.
I could do it at noon that day, my work's closed.
Oh, great.
Or do we do it does anybody care what time of day we do
Yes,
it?
yes. My schedule's wide open.
'Cause she's
Yeah,
on
mine
lunch.
is too.
Al, do you work on Wednesdays at noon?
At noon, I can get out.
If we
let's
decide to do
please-
it in the middle of the day?
Let's do it at noon then.
Close to Christmas?
Yeah, there's double trucks all this week. This is our bad week.
What time would work best for you on Wednesday? Sounds like the rest of us are pretty
9
flexible.
o'clock at night.
You're going the wrong direction.
If you wanna, like, 2:30, 3 o'clock?
3 o'clock?
3 works for you?
3 o'clock?
3 o'clock on Wednesday?
On Wednesday?
Do you need a motion for that, or are we good with the consensus?
I would love a motion.
All right?
I move we have our meeting on Wednesday at 3 o'clock.
27th at 3. Okay.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, do you need anything for us for that, Karen?
I don't, we'll put a notice out for, consideration of the final budget amendments and then the fire truck. I didn't catch who seconded that motion.
Jen,
And as I understand that motion to mean 2 things, budget changes and perhaps fire truck purchases, which in some ways is a budget change itself.
Yep.
All right, any last comments on special meeting from folks? Thanks for being flexible in the holidays. That brings us then to the superintendent's report.
Thank you for everything tonight. End of the year is always an extremely busy time for staff and for the board. Thank you for your allowing us the convenience of having your time during a very busy holiday season. Our staff, I can't tell you, there were reams of paper being printed today for absentee ballot applications, I believe. So it's hard to believe that staff is already working on that, but the clerk and staff are knee-deep in elections already. We are finishing up, obviously, year-end finances. We have went ahead and scheduled the audit for the beginning of April. And then, in addition to that, we will be looking at end-of-year payroll and W-2s and all those fun things that we do at the end of the year. So there's a lot going on. A lot of it is things that are routine and we do each year, but it keeps us very busy with the time that we have in and around the holidays. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I know it's kind of a 30,000 feet view of what's going on in the office right now, but I can assure you, everybody's hopping.
Looks like no. All right, well, that brings us to our second public statement time, up to 3 minutes for any member of the public to talk about whatever they'd like. I'd welcome public statement.
Oh, I just have a couple. Ray Kotke, Park Lake Road. I know this is probably not something, but I swear in the 2022 budget, we talked about new fire trucks. And if you recall, that was about the time, I believe, that we got the confirmation of ARPA funds. And I suggested, since 2022 was a time where used vehicles were going crazy in price, that it would have been a good time to sell those used trucks. Do you recall that conversation? It was you and I that, I think, But, you know, it's water over the dam now, but, I think that's a good offset on that cost of purchases, selling that used equipment, because it's still in good condition. And that could, like I say, seriously offset, you could probably get $250,000 for the two of them, you know? But, anyway, one other thing I wanted to mention is the possibility, I don't know if you signed checks or contracts yet, but, there was $750,000 left in the ARPA funds that could probably be directed toward this. You may want to think about that, you know. It's great to have Port in place and have that done, but it could go a few years more without hurting. And that's probably $150,000 right there. And a couple of the other things, I would like to see the high-tech locks and everything on the buildings here. I wouldn't want to mess with that, but as I recall, there were some other ones that were kind of discretionary spending that we'd love to have, you know, as a township, but fire trucks are, I think, pretty important. So, that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Kotke. The only other member of our general public, nothing to say, Gray?
Thank you, I've already commented.
All right, we'll turn it over to board member comments. Trustee Kellerman, you want to get us started?
Well, the trucks are, when we decide, or if we decide, it's still almost 1.5 years before they get delivered. Just want to think about that too, that it's not, we're not getting them tomorrow. And I think we need to, in terms of the fastener company, we need to continue thinking and talk to experts on that subject, as I have been doing for several weeks. Bond posting by them is one, testing the water and the soil at the site regularly is one, and all this needs to be in contractual form, because saying that they won't pollute anything doesn't mean anything. It has to be contractual. And I'm sure no expert in PFAS collection and safety and whatever, but there are people who are, there are lawyers that are, there's engineers that are, there's toxicologists that I've talked to all over the country that are, government officials that are experts, and we have to make sure we cross every T and dot every I before we allow this to happen. And I think it's terribly important for this township to protect. California's suit that they won for ruining the soil was $800 million. If you think our trucks are expensive, think about an $800 million suit for our township. And that's one of the things I've been spending weeks on, looking at, listening to, talking to experts all over the country, and we need to be very careful. And there, like I said, there's lawyers that's all they do is protect the environment with PFAS. And it can't be just ignored. It scares the tar out of me. The more I learn, the more scared I get.
Thank you. Jack?
No, nothing, thank you.
Jennifer?
I just want to say, I've been watching the planning commission meetings. No, and I really have enjoyed them, because with all of the ordinances that you guys have been putting forth in front of us, it's really helpful to hear your opinions when I make my opinions, so.
I believe somebody watches them.
I do, I watch them all when they get posted, so I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got a few thoughts. There are still committee openings, especially if the folks who have not yet turned in an application for reappointment choose not to. They'll have a lot of committee openings,
Which
so.
ones?
I'll get you a list and let you all know where we have some openings. But if you could help me in spreading that word, and anybody who's watching who's interested in some service, we'd love to have you. And that application is on the website as well. I've been talking to Karen about perhaps doing a town hall early in 2024 around the Norm Fasteners project, to invite the community in, to show them what we've approved, to show them the 18 conditions, to get that dialogue open. We've conditionally approved it, so we're not revisiting it, but to let folks know what the project is and what the project isn't, I think that would be helpful in providing some more transparency for folks that are just coming up up to speed on the project. So I'll be reaching out to all of you to ask if that's a good idea and some time frame around that. And then lastly, I mentioned earlier, we've been critiqued for not doing strategic planning, and I share that critique of us. It seems not the best plan to decide a strategic plan in the last year of the term. We'd sort of be setting a strategic plan for a group that may not be any of us sitting here. So that seems like not a good use of our time. But I do think we could do some one-year planning, what we want to achieve by the end of 2024. So I'll also be asking you all how you feel about that and what that might look like. Again, that could be like giving some guidance to the Planning Commission and other committees about how they should spend their time, helping the staff to decide what to prioritize. I think that's all still helpful, even if we can only do it in a one-year chunk. And then those of us who choose to run and decide and are voted back in can think about strategic planning for a longer time period, you know, in late 2024, early 2025. So those are the things on my mind. I'll be reaching out to all of you about those things, but wanted to share so you could start thinking about them as well. Brenda?
I just want to let the residents know that we will be sending out about 3,700 absentee ballot applications at the beginning of next week. So just watch for them. I mean, it's a bad week with being Christmas and stuff, but when they change the date of the election, everything's moved up. So just be on the lookout.
Thank you. Al?
I hate to bring it to Karen's attention again, but we've talked about it for the last 2 years. Marsh Road in 78, the interchange there, we got more businesses down there now. We got more people walking and more small kids walking through there. I see them every morning when I go to work. And one time we talked to Meridian Township.
Correct.
About just coming up and hitting that and leaving what they would charge us. I know the highway told us to stay out of there, but we get somebody hurt in there when they keep piling that snow in there.
I'll reach out to Meridian.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Al. Okay.
I just want to say I'm looking forward to joining the Planning Commission officially in January and learning all that goes along with that. And that's it.
Thanks. Any last comments from anyone before we adjourn for the day? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
We adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned.
Well, usually kids do, but,
Any of us, and it's Karen. It's your normal meeting, but I'm crashing.
Think we can get our fire trucks?
Oh, I think we can, but I think I'm disappointed.